Naomi Carter had always believed her front yard was more than a patch of grass. It was her sanctuary. Rows of marigolds, tulips, and wild lavender swayed gently in the breeze, a quiet rebellion of color against the uniform beige houses that lined Maplewood Estates. Gardening was how she healed. Each seed she pressed into the soil felt like stitching another piece of her fractured heart back together. Ever since her mother passed, leaving behind only the memory of her voice saying, "Keep beauty in your life, no matter what they take from you." For months, Naomi had worked at dawn and dusk, her hands blistered but steady, coaxing life from the ground. The neighbors would glance at her yard as they drove past, some smiling politely, others frowning in disapproval. She noticed, but she didn't care. The flowers mattered more. One cool April morning, as the sun cast soft gold across the blossoms, she noticed an envelope tucked under her doormat. The paper was thick, the logo embossed with sharp authority, Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association. Her fingers trembled as she tore it open. You are hereby instructed to remove all non-approved plantings from your property within 10 days. Failure to comply will result in daily fines. Naomi blinked, reading the words again. Non-approved? Her garden wasn't cluttered or wild. It was vibrant, alive. She whispered aloud as though her mother were listening. They're just flowers. How could anyone see this as wrong? The letter slipped from her hand onto the porch. A faint wind caught the corner, pressing it against her foot like it wanted her to confront it. Inside her chest, something tightened. Not just frustration, but recognition. This wasn't about flowers. It was about control. Naomi folded the letter, set it neatly on her kitchen counter, and looked back out at her garden through the window. The colors danced defiantly in the morning light. She exhaled slowly. They wanted her silence, but silence had never saved anyone. And in that moment, Naomi decided the flowers would stay. The letter weighed on Naomi's mind for days, but she refused to touch her flowers. When the deadline passed, a second envelope arrived. This one harsher, stamped with the words "Final Notice." Alongside it came whispers from neighbors. Elaine Granger had taken notice. Elaine wasn't just any board member. She was the president of the Maplewood Estates HOA, a woman who wore power like armor. Tall, precise, always in pearl earrings, she carried herself as though the neighborhood was her personal kingdom. What most didn't see was the fragility beneath her perfection, a crumbling marriage hidden behind manicured smiles, and a gnawing desperation to keep control of something, anything. At the monthly HOA meeting, Naomi decided to attend. Folding chairs lined the community hall, the air thick with fluorescent light and tension. When Naomi entered, conversations paused. All eyes flicked from her face to the image of her garden projected on a screen at the front. Elaine stood by the podium, voice sharp and rehearsed. "We have rules for a reason," she announced. "Uniformity maintains property values. Deviations, however small, erode the standard we've all agreed to." Naomi rose slowly, her voice steady despite the knots in her stomach. "They're just flowers. They're not harming anyone. Why single them out?" A murmur rippled through the room. Some neighbors avoided her gaze. Others quietly nodded. Elaine's smile was thin, her eyes cold. "This isn't personal, Mrs. Carter. It's policy," but the way she lingered on Naomi's name said otherwise. In the days that followed, the fines grew steeper. $50, then $100, then $150 a day. Neighbors whispered about Elaine's history, how she'd driven out the Garcias for painting their shutters red, how she'd humiliated the Johnsons over a children's playset. Each story carried the same thread. Elaine thrived on domination. Naomi tried trimming the edges of her garden, softening its look, but nothing pleased the board. Another letter came. Immediate removal required. She stood at her window, watching the tulips sway. Defiance tightened inside her like roots digging deeper into the earth. Elaine thought she could bury Naomi under fines and fear. Instead, Naomi decided the flowers would not only stay, they would multiply. The next morning, Naomi rose before dawn, the sky still violet with fading stars. Instead of tearing her flowers out, she carried a tray of new seedlings into the yard. With every careful press of soil around a root, she felt a surge of quiet rebellion. Marigolds, daisies, roses, a riot of color against the HOA's sterile vision of conformity. By the week's end, her lawn was transformed into a living mosaic, bright reds bleeding into oranges, purples brushing against gold. Neighbors slowed their cars to look. Some rolled down their windows with a quiet thumbs up, while others shook their heads, afraid of what Elaine's wrath might bring. That night, sitting on her porch, Naomi confided in Marcus, her oldest friend, a teacher who often stopped by after evening classes. His voice carried both admiration and concern. "Naomi, you know she won't stop. Elaine's the type who has to win." Naomi sipped her tea, staring at the flowers glowing faintly in the porch light. "And what am I supposed to do? Bow down? These flowers, they're all I have left of her." Marcus leaned forward, his tone softer now. "I just don't want to see you crushed. This is bigger than plants." Naomi's hands tightened around the mug. Bigger than plants. Yes, she knew that. But surrendering meant erasing her mother's memory, and that she could never allow. Later that night, in the quiet glow of her living room, Naomi took a photo of the garden, colors bursting even through the dim lens of her phone. She posted it online with a simple caption, "They find me for beauty, I choose defiance." She set the phone down, unaware that her small act of rebellion was about to ignite something far larger. By morning, Naomi's late-night post had spread far beyond Maplewood Estates. Strangers online began sharing her photos with captions like, "Let her garden grow," and "Flowers over fines." Within days, the movement spilled into the neighborhood itself. One by one, houses that once displayed only neat shrubs and regulation grass began sprouting bursts of color. Sunflowers in one yard, pink azaleas in another. What had started as Naomi's private act of defiance had become something larger, something unstoppable. Even families who had once stayed silent now planted flowers of their own. Small gestures of solidarity that whispered, "You're not alone." Elaine felt her grip slipping. Rumors began to surface. Whispered conversations about questionable HOA expenses, board funds used for personal renovations. The tidy image she'd curated for years began to fracture. At a hastily called board meeting, Elaine cornered Naomi in front of the crowd. Her voice shook with fury, though she tried to mask it with authority. "You think this little stunt makes you a hero? You're tearing this community apart." Naomi met her gaze, calm but unyielding. "No, you did that the day you turned neighbors into enemies." Gasps rippled through the room. For the first time, Elaine's composure faltered, her eyes darting to faces that no longer looked at her with respect, but with suspicion. Outside, the street glowed with rebellion, front yards alive with blossoms swaying in the summer air. Children played among the petals, neighbors exchanged nods of quiet victory. Naomi stood at her porch that evening, the sound of laughter drifting across the block. Her flowers were no longer just hers. They belonged to everyone, and Elaine, once untouchable, was now standing on soil that was crumbling beneath her feet. Elaine's downfall came swiftly. The whispers of financial misconduct became proof, and the board voted her out in disgrace. For the first time in years, Maplewood Estates felt free of her shadow. Naomi stood in her garden, the air thick with the scent of roses and lavender. Her hands brushed across the petals, soft and alive, as her mother's voice echoed in memory. "Never let them take your beauty." The flowers stood taller now, not just hers, but a tapestry woven by the neighborhood. Colors bursting from every yard, each bloom a quiet act of courage. She had been fined, threatened, pushed to the edge, but she endured. And in enduring, she inspired. Naomi closed her eyes, listening to the laughter of children playing nearby. The HOA could no longer silence her. Her garden had become more than resistance, it had become a legacy.